How far would you go to save the world? In the 1970s, Herbert Mullin killed 13 people in an attempt to stop a catastrophic earthquake. What made him think this would really work? Let's talk about his mindset. Before we get into this episode of Mindset, I would like to issue some trigger warnings. These consist of murder and drug abuse. There has been a lot of research put into this episode, and all of that will be linked in the description. All opinions are mine, and I mean no disrespect to anyone I talk about in this episode. Herbert Mullin was a prominent serial killer in the 1970s. But why did he do it? During his teen years, Herbert started showing signs of schizophrenia, which is believed to have played a part in his delusions. Today's episode will look at schizophrenia and how it may or may have not have played a part in his delusions. What is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a chronic mental health condition that affects how people thinks, perceives reality, and relates to others. It typically emerges in late adolescence or early adulthood. What it can look like: hallucinations, often hearing voices; delusions, strong-held false beliefs; disorganized thinking or speech. What causes it? Schizophrenia doesn't have a single cause. It can be linked to genetics, brain chemistry. It could also be coping mechanisms or trauma. It can also be caused by stress, upbringing, or substance abuse. To see if any of the above links to Herbert, let's take a look at his childhood and relationship with his parents. Herbert Mullin was born on the 18th of April 1947 in San Luis, California, to Jean Mullin and Martin William Mullin. Jean Mullin was born in 1918. She was raised as a devoted Catholic who and let that dictate her rules of her house. It was known that she was nurturing, but also had principles that they had to follow, which was assumed to have been adopted from her religious background. She passed away in 1982. There is little to be known about Jean, but it doesn't look like Herbert could have inherited his issue from her. Martin was a World War II veteran and ended up becoming a furniture salesman. Martin Mullin was known to be strict, but not abusive. He raised his family in a Roman Catholic household. It was also known that he taught Herbert how to use guns. Herbert Mullin was the youngest son to Jean and Martin Mullin. He has an older sister. From what I've learned from the parents' background, he was raised in a stable home with strict discipline. He was often described as well-adjusted and a bright child. He was also known to be a Boy Scout, played Little League Baseball, and was also popular in high school, getting voted to be the most likely to succeed. But when did everything take a turn? June 1965. When he was just 18 years old, his friend Dean Richardson died in a car accident after graduation. This was thought to be a trigger for his sanity. After Dean's passing, he made a shrine for him and then started becoming obsessed with reincarnation. From 66 to 68, Herbert graduated from Cabrillo College with an associate degree in 67. But to stable himself and keep everything mellow, he started using marijuana. This obviously had the opposite effect, with marijuana having hallucinogenic properties. On top of that, he started using LSD. LSD is a potent hallucinogenic, which is probably where the cogs began to really turn, and this schizophrenia starts taking its place. 1969. Herbert's schizophrenia became apparent when he was at a family dinner. He randomly started mimicking his brother-in-law's every move. This is known as echopraxia, which is an indication of schizophrenia. He decided to voluntarily commit himself to Mendonico State Hospital. Mullin was reportedly in and out of multiple hospitals, but was constantly being released due to the fact he wasn't harming himself. He was committed to 5 hospitals, and each one struggled to help him. During this time, he got diagnosed with schizophrenia, aggravated by drug abuse, and he was treated with antipsychotic medication. Schizophrenia is treatable, though not curable. In a simple sense, many people live stable, meaningful lives with support. Common treatments include antipsychotic medications, psychological therapies like CBT for psychosis, social support, housing, employment, community care. Schizophrenia and mental health stigma. Schizophrenia carries a heavy stigma, often fueled by media portrayals that exaggerate danger or unpredictability. The stigma can discourage people from seeking help, lead to social isolation, and contribute to discrimination. In reality, people with schizophrenia are far more likely to be victims of violence than the perpetrators. 1972. In 1972, Herbert moves back in with his parents. On April 18, 1906, there was an earthquake in San Francisco that caused a tsunami and killed over 3,000 people. Mullin believed that because his birthday shared a date with this tragic event, that it was relevant to him and up to him to stop this. Mullin's adult life and everyone else's in America was plagued by the Vietnam War. With countless lives lost and blood spilled, Herbert thought this is what was keeping the earth at bay. In 1972, the war starts winding down and he begins to panic. If the earth isn't getting its fix of blood that way, there has to be another way to do it. He believed that it's up to him to start spilling blood in order to stop this earthquake. He said that his father telepathically told him to do this. October 13th, the first victim. His first victim was Lawrence White. As Herbert was driving down, he had noticed that Lawrence was walking along a windy road in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and he ended up stopping his car, pretending he was having car issues. Lawrence, being a nice guy, went to help Herbert. Things then go south really fast. He's beaten to death with a baseball bat, and his body is left at the side of the road. October 24th, Herbert's second victim. Herbert picked up a college student named Mary Guilfoyle. She was running late for an interview and decided to hitch a ride with Herbert. She would never make it to that interview. He stabbed her through the chest, and her body then dissected and scattered her body along a hillside road. This was the only victim Herbert ended up dissecting. It was also known that her body wasn't found until the following February. November 2nd, victim number 3. Henry Tomey was a father at St. Mary's Church, and Herbert went to confess to him, telling him everything he had did. And after he did that, Herbert stabbed him to death with his hunting knife because he wanted to protect himself from exposure. January 1973, the day he killed 5 people. He decided to kill Jim and his wife Joan. Jim was the one who introduced him to marijuana, but when trying to find Jim, he ran into the new occupant of Jim's old place. The person was named Kathy Francis. She told him that Joan and Jim moved to another part of town. Herbert went to find them both and then stabbed them repeatedly. Herbert, again with the fear of being caught, went back to Kathy's apartment. That day, Mullin killed Kathy and her 2 children. February 6, 1973. One day, Herbert came across 4 teenage campers. While the teenagers were in deep conversation, he went up to them and asked them to leave, but he said he did this telepathically, and they all ended up saying yes. After they said yes, he then took out his gun and shot them all. February 13th, the final victim, and when he got found out. Fred Perez, Herbert Mullin's final victim. Fred was working in his driveway when, out of nowhere, Herbert pulled up and shot him in the chest, but this was a turning point in the Herbert Mullin killing spree. As Fred's neighbour, John Stagnero, heard the shot and saw Herbert's license plate, and called the police. On this day, Herbert Mullin got arrested by the police. March 1st, 1973. Herbert Mullin was charged for 10 counts of murder. However, he did not get charged for his first 3 victims. Throughout this, he ended up pleading guilty for all 10 counts of murder, but was not found competent to represent himself. It was also known that he was deemed legally sane in all 10 counts. June 13th and August 19th, the trial and the conviction. Herb stands trial for the murders. During the trial, he mentioned that he was hearing messages that told him to commit human sacrifices to prevent massive earthquakes in California. He called the messages die songs. Schizophrenia and serial killers. Most people with schizophrenia are not violent. The vast majority are not dangerous. Violence risk is only slightly elevated compared to the general population, and often linked to untreated symptoms, substance misuse, and extreme social stress. Serial killers are really driven by schizophrenia. When people think of serial killers, they're usually dealing with very different psychological problems, often involving psychopath or antisocial personality traits, lack of empathy, and manipulativeness and planning. Herb was convicted of 10 counts of murder. He was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and 8 counts of second-degree murder. He received a life sentence and would be eligible for parole in 2020. Conclusion. Because of Herbert's schizophrenia, he ended up killing 13 people. His motives were sacrificing people to prevent earthquakes in California. It's almost hard to say that Herbert was necessarily evil, but looking at who he killed and how he did, it's hard to say he wasn't. This was a man with deep issues who was failed by those around him. It seems like doctors brushed him off. Those who were selling him drugs were taking advantage. It didn't look like he could go to his parents to deal with grief. It's impossible to predict, but you'd have to imagine if healthcare in this time was better, maybe this whole thing could have been avoided. Today's standards have improved, and if you, yourself, are having any issues, it's important to seek help. Today's professionals still seem somewhat knowledgeable. It's helped me, but in the time that took, you never really know what could have happened, and it's cases, such as Mullin's, where it shocks me that better practices aren't put in place. The takeaway. Schizophrenia is a serious but manageable mental health condition, rooted in complex biological and social factors. While it can involve distressing symptoms, it is not a predictor of becoming violent or a serial killer. The association largely comes from myth, stigma, and media narratives, rather than evidence. What lengths would you go to save the world? Herbert Mullin went on a killing spree to stop earthquakes. What made him think this would really work? We sat and we understood what his mindset was.